How's it going, everyone, and welcome in for a WCC Tournament edition of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. We are just hours away from the start of the tournament in Las Vegas at the Orleans Arena. We'll be tipping off with 10 seed Pacific against 11 seed San Diego. That will be at 2:30 on ESPN Plus. So that one will get us going, and the winner of that game will take on LMU on Friday. So we'll get into that game preview. I'll also go into what we should be looking at for the tournament overall. Maybe a couple of guys that might be potential breakout stars or teams that could go on a run in this tournament. Obviously, there's a few teams that are very capable of winning, but we'll also talk about my pick for the winner of the tournament will be. And we'll get into, or I'll get into all of that in just a bit. But we're going to start off with the WCC Awards, which were announced on Tuesday, and there shouldn't be much of a surprise to anybody who's been watching this season of how these awards kind of all shaped out. So we'll start off with all these awards, and it was a near clean sweep for St. Mary's, the team that was the WCC champion and won it by 3 games. So Player of the Year, Augustas Marciulionis, for the second time, back-to-back years, he is the WCC Player of the Year, 15th player to hold that title, the last one being Drew Timme. Defensive Player of the Year, Mitchell Saxon. He is the second player ever to earn 2 WCC Defensive Player of the Year honors. The other is Diamond Simpson in 2008-2009. Randy Bennett, Coach of the Year. No surprise here, as obviously this team lost Aiden Mahaney, lost Josh Jefferson, lost Alex Dukas, and arguably are a better team this year than they were a year ago. Newcomer of the Year, Paulos Morauskas. Not really a big surprise there either. Sixth Man of the Year, Mikey Lewis. Some big performances off the bench in big games. He had probably his 2 best conference games against Gonzaga, which resulted in 2 wins. And then the Freshman of the Year, Austin Rapp from Portland, and he was one I had picked probably from the beginning of the year who I thought could end up having that title. He was going to get the opportunity, he was going to get the minutes, and he has shown very early on that he is going to be a problem in this conference for a while. So Austin Rapp being the Freshman of the Year. And then, of course, the first teams and all the other conference awards were also announced. It wasn't just the all-league teams. We also did see the first teams, the second teams, and all of those come through as well. And honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of surprise after seeing the names that popped out there or whatever else. The only one that really kind of stood out to me is maybe looking at the first team and that having at least 1 or 2 names that it's like, well, I don't know if they completely bought in. I was looking at Adama Ball being on that first team. There were a couple Santa Clara guys. He's the only Santa Clara player on the first team, and he was someone I actually thought was probably more second team. I thought Christoph Tilley all year long had shown that he was probably their most consistent player and really kind of the guy that really made a difference for Santa Clara. I thought he was would have made that first team, but you kind of take that for what it is. But the rest of the first team, Nolan Hickman, Graham Ike, Marciulionis, Morauskas, Ryan Nemhard, Michael Ratai, Mitchell Saxon, Malik Thomas, and Marcus Williams. Yes, we can talk about how a 10-team first team is kind of not is a little much, but that is what we saw from the WCC. That first team, I don't think again, Adama Ball is maybe my one I could have swapped out. The rest makes complete sense. And so just looking at that list, thinking about where teams are, that all checks out to me. Now, the one thing, obviously, there's a little bit of controversy, and there was controversy last year over Player of the Year. And last year, Augustas Marciulionis, the number one contender against him was Graham Ike. And last year, I made the case that EK was, to me, was the player of the year based on what we had seen in conference play, what he had been able to do, and all of that. And looking at what Marciulionis was able to do this year, you think about that coming off the year he had last year, 12 points, nearly 6 assists, and he got better in conference play last year. Now this year, his numbers are all better across the board. 14 points per game, 6 assists, 2.8 rebounds, 1.4 steals. His shooting percentages have all gone up. He leads the best team in the WCC in points per game, in assists per game, in steals per game. He is responsible for, between his field goals made and his assists, he's responsible for 40.9% of his team's field goals. The only one who is higher is Ryan Nembhard. 720-plus point games in WCC play, for the season. And when you look at maybe his number one contender this year, which is Ryan Nembhard, Nembhard had 0 of those games for the season. There were a lot of times late in games that Augustas Marciulionis closed it out for St. Mary's. And that is something that Gonzaga has not done all year long in close game situations. They're still 0-7 in that category. St. Mary's 5-3 in games decided by 6 or less, or that go to overtime. And so while I see, like, looking at the numbers of a lot of people screaming Ryan Nembhard should be player of the year or whatnot, the 10 assists a game, I understand that. I see the impact that he makes on the offensive end. But I've also watched enough of St. Mary's to see that Marciulionis is the better defender, which I don't think gets enough credit in this conversation. He's been the better in the clutch all season long, and I think that has not gone into as much of the equation or what is talked about. And while the numbers are maybe a bit lopsided, let's be honest, team success does matter, and in these sorts of awards, as it always has in the WCC. I mean, if we were to go back further, there are plenty of other individual players that probably could have won this award because they had great numbers, but their team didn't finish great. I think we might be having a different conversation, or at least a tougher conversation, if Ryan Nembhard or Gonzaga finished 1 game behind St. Mary's, or maybe even 2 games behind St. Mary's. The fact is they finished 3 games behind St. Mary's. The Gales swept the Zags in the 2 matchups, and in those scenarios, we haven't seen, in close game situations, you would think that the point guard is the one who would be able to kind of be the steadying force, especially one that is as good as Ryan Nembhard has been. And there are countless times throughout the season where we have seen him almost vanish late in close game situations. And that's, to me, one of the biggest tipping points of what makes Marciulionis the player of the year this year, and also why he was player of the year last year. Yes, he doesn't rise to some of the names of the past. He does, like the Bill Cartwrights, the Drew Timmies. You think of like the Steve Nashes, the Doug Christies. Like he doesn't move the needle in the way that a lot of those past players have, who've also been 2-time WCC Players of the Year. But his team has won the league 2 years in a row. And he's been the best player on the team that has won the league 2 years in a row. And that does count for something. The fact that St. Mary's is largely balanced is obviously a product of the system, but it's also that you watch him play in these games and he takes it upon himself to make sure that others are involved first. And if he needs to step in, he will, and he has in a lot of these games where they've needed a boost, they need someone to step up, and that is when you see Marciulionis make that leap, make that jump into being the best player in the WCC, even though the numbers don't always look the part. So this year, unlike last year, my opinion has changed on this, is that Marciulionis indeed was the player of the year this year, and I don't think it was necessarily all that close, maybe even as close as a lot of Zag fans might have wanted it to be. Team success matters, the clutch part matters, the defense matters, and Marciulionis did all of these things all year long, and clearly the coaches agreed because they also picked him twice in a row. All right, so we're getting into the WCC tournament, and we do have a game on Thursday, 2:30, San Diego and Pacific. The winner will face 7 seed LMU on Friday. These two split the season series. San Diego won the first matchup 75-65. That was their very first conference game. And then Pacific won the second in Stockton 71-69. So these two games have been pretty close. And honestly, it's like San Diego's been probably overall the better team in this matchup to this point, even though San Diego finished with all of 2 wins in conference play. But the San Diego team is coming off of a win. They won their first conference game, and they won their last conference game. They rallied from 12 down against Portland to win 82-80 on Saturday. Cody Clouet, he had career high 35 points in that one. He's been in double figures the last 4 games, shooting 60% from the field over that stretch. So he's starting to play a lot better of late. Tony Duckett, another guy, he was in double figures again the other night. But this is a freshman. This is a kid who is about as explosive as anyone in the WCC can be. He did have 31 points earlier on in conference play, but he also was only shooting 37% for the field for the season. We know the San Diego team does not shoot terribly well. They only shoot 40% as a team. They're shooting 28% from 3 as a team as well. So this is not going, you wouldn't expect that this game is going to be all that high scoring, especially when Pacific also doesn't really shoot it well. But what they do is that they're gritty. They're going to get after it. They rebound well, and they're going to try to get to the free throw line. Pacific is one of the best at doing that. Elijah Fisher is very good at getting to the free throw line. And obviously, that's someone who's been averaging 15 plus points per game. Elias Ralph, also another guy who is been one of the best scorers in the WCC this year. But for me, their success actually surrounds Lamar Washington, because he has been their best player all year long. He was on the All WCC second team. The 13 points, nearly 6 assists, 5 rebounds a game. He had a 31-10-6 game against LMU just a couple of weeks ago. And we've seen him light it up against some better teams. Obviously, everyone will point to the 40-point performance against Washington State, which is still one of the better performances in the WCC all year long. But this Pacific team does have, obviously, its limitations. There's a reason they're in 10th. There's a reason they're down in this matchup. They don't force a lot of turnovers, and they don't really make all that many threes either. Mentioned San Diego only shoots 28% from 3. Well, Pacific only shoots 29% from 3. Also, Pacific only has opponents turning the ball over 10 times a game, which is very low. They don't really get after it on that, and they don't force a lot of turnovers, which limits their opportunities to get out and run and to really kind of get themselves some easy baskets. Because once they're into this half-court offense, they are undersized. They don't shoot it well. And now, albeit they have rebounded pretty well, they are still actually in the positive for the season on the rebounding front. They've done it. They haven't rebounded as well the last week or so, but overall, this is a Pacific squad that can get after it on the glass, even if they are a little bit on the undersized front. So when I'm looking at these two teams, I'm looking at this matchup between San Diego and Pacific. it really feels like to me it's whichever team can limit the amount of mistakes is the team that's going to move on. San Diego has not played well. I mean, they had 16 straight losses in the midst of conference play. It was looking really bad at a lot of points during WCC. But against Pacific, they've played better, and they have been more competitive. They've obviously won one of the games, and they almost won the second one as well. So they're coming off of a win. So there's at least a little bit of a better energy and better momentum going into Las Vegas. That if they can limit turnovers, if Pacific can, if San Diego can limit its turnovers and kind of do what Pacific lets you do and take care of the basketball, they're going to be in a far better position to win this game. Pacific, they really have to make sure that they're taking care of the glass. If they can hold court on the glass, if they take care of that and get some second chance points, get some easy buckets, Pacific is going to have their better chance in this matchup. But thinking about this first game, thinking about opening up in this one, I almost want to ride with momentum at this point. I think even though San Diego has been at the bottom of the league really all season long, it feels like this is a game that they're poised to get. They have some players that are playing a lot better right now. Again, mentioned Clouet, Duckett. They have some others who are also starting to play a little bit better right now. This is also going to possibly the last game for Steven Jamerson. So this is another opportunity for him to continue his college career. And on the Pacific side, they've had just so many moments where they've been almost there and aren't able to cash in. And it's either one of those games or they get blown out. There doesn't seem like that there's one or the other. There's not they lost by like 10, 12. Right now it seems like they're either losing by 30 or they're losing by 5. And right now for Pacific, I'm not feeling as great about them going into this one. San Diego feels like because they got that last game against Portland, a Portland team that has been playing well of late, that they are going to be able to get this one and move on to face LMU on Friday. All right, so thinking about this first game and obviously making a pick to say that San Diego will pull this minor upset and move on to the second round of the tournament. I'm also thinking about the WCC tournament as a whole, and there's definitely a few teams I think that can make a run based on where they are in the bracket, and then maybe also a few guys that could have like a great tournament. We've seen a ton of guys just explode in the WCC tournament, and I think we could see a few of those guys in this one as well. So let's start with making a run, and I think there's a couple candidates for this one, and I'm going to take one team on one side of the bracket and one team on the other. And I'm going to start with Washington State. And maybe this feels like the obvious one because we know how good of an offensive team Washington State is. They continue to be one of the better teams in all of college basketball on the offensive end. They shoot it well from 2, they shoot it well from 3, they shoot it well from the line. They shoot it well from everywhere. Their Achilles heel all year long has been the turnovers. And we saw it the other night against Santa Clara. What was it? They had, I forget, it wasn't Santa Clara. It was the other night. They had 23 turnovers in a game, and it's like, what are you doing? What is happening to this team? They look way more talented than to let this happen on a consistent basis. But it seemed like every time you look up, 17, 18, 19, 20 turnovers for this team that let teams that should not be with them back into games. And San Diego was one of those teams just the other night. But all that said, they're a team that could make a run. I'm looking at their likely first game. So if San Diego wins this first one, they get LMU, and the winner of that would get Washington State. I'd feel pretty good if I'm Washington State against either LMU or San Diego, whoever I end up facing first. And let's say I would say that they probably win that first game. Then they get USF. USF is a team they have beaten. Even though that was, yes, far earlier in conference play, before really USF had started to figure its own rhythm out again, they know what getting a W against the Dons looks like. And they have the firepower to match USF from the perimeter. Now, obviously, that second game did not go well at all for Washington State, the game at War Memorial. But if Ethan Price can have a good stretch, if Dane Erickstrup can get hot, if Nate Calmise can also have a good stretch, this is a team that can definitely make a run in the tournament. Now, I do think that I say a run, once they run into Gonzaga, that would end. I don't think they have a shot against the Zags, but they could absolutely get a win against LMU. They would have a shot against USF. And so they could actually make the run to get to the semifinals. So that this is one team that I do think has a chance to make this mini run to the semifinals before they would run into Gonzaga. And I don't think they have a shot against that. Now, the other one I would look at on the other side of the bracket, and this one I thought was, there might be an obvious, and I'm going to take the surprise one because of how they have played of late. I'm going to say Portland, actually. I know Portland is in that 8th seed game with Pepperdine, but the way the Pilots have played over the last month makes me believe that they could actually start to get on a roll. And it hasn't just been Austin Rapp. It's been Chris Austin. You've seen it from Masic. You have seen it from McKinnon. They have now a number of guys who can give you 20 plus points a game on any given night. And could they get it against Pepperdine? Of course. Like, I think like Pepperdine's the one where it's like they could. Now, I could see them absolutely winning that game, but I could also see them losing that game. In this scenario, I'm saying that Portland wins that one. They move on to that their second game, which would be Oregon State, a team they have beaten, a team they can try to replicate the formula that they had at the Childs Center and do it one more time in Vegas, in a building that they are more familiar with than Oregon State. If they were to somehow get by Oregon State, then they would get Santa Clara. And Santa Clara, while they might be the team that is the one most capable of running the table altogether, they are also a team that is capable of shooting itself out of games. And if that were to happen, Portland would definitely give itself a shot. In 6 of their last 8 games, they have scored 80 plus points per game. And that is something that is going to lend yourself well to keep up with Santa Clara. Because I don't think Portland is going to win a game where they're going to keep Santa Clara, slow them down on an offensive end. I think you're going to have to try to outscore them and outrun them. And they are capable and have shown over the last month or so that there's something there. There's maybe some level of excitement to look at what Portland is doing and catch Santa Clara on a bad night, and that could be another big upset. So I'm going to a very, very dark horse on this one that I would take. Portland is another team that could make a run on the other side of the bracket with Oregon State and Santa Clara. Now I will say, because I'm not going to say this is a quote, make a run, but Santa Clara is the team, I think, of the top half of the league, not counting St. Mary's and Gonzaga, that is the best chance to run the table and get the auto bid and go to the NCAA tournament. I still think it's them. They have played incredibly well over the last few weeks. They have been shooting it incredibly well, even though they got wiped out by Gonzaga in the second half of their game. We know what they're very, very capable of doing. They get Oregon State, they get that. Sorry, I'm assuming Oregon State, but they're going to see that 5, 8, 9 team. That is going to be their first matchup. So it's either going to be Oregon State, Portland, or Pepperdine. And Santa Clara, in my mind, should be able to take care of business in that first game. Then they would move on to play St. Mary's. And as a St. Mary's fan, they are the one, they scare me the most of the remaining of the teams in the WCC tournament. They are the team that is the one I'm like, this squad, if they get on a roll and they got on a run, could absolutely beat St. Mary's in that tournament, in that event. And we've already seen them beat Gonzaga. Obviously, the second game was a complete flip from the first one, but the Broncos have the talent. They have the shooters. It's a matter of whether or not they can play enough defense and whether or not a lot of times they can just get out of their own way. And because if they were to somehow get in, they run the table. Let's, for the sake of argument, say it's Oregon State. Another quad 2, St. Mary's a quad 1, Gonzaga quad 1. That means that Santa Clara is probably going to bump itself up somewhere into maybe the low 40s in the net, and not only would be in the tournament, but probably 10 seed, 11 seed, somewhere in there. They won't be 12, 13. They're going to be a legitimate seed and have a real shot at pulling an upset in the tournament. Now, all that said about Santa Clara being the best shot to run the table of any of the non-Gonzaga St. Mary's, I don't think it's going to be someone other than those two that wins it. I do think that we are going to end up seeing Gonzaga St. Mary's in the championship game again. For all the talk, for all the great play we have seen all year long, we've gotten into March, and the two best teams playing right now in the WCC are St. Mary's and Gonzaga. They are the 1-2 seeds again. They've been the 1-2 seeds the last few years. And since the tournament has moved to Las Vegas in 2009, only St. Mary's and Gonzaga have won this thing. I do not think that's going to change this year. It will be one of those two again. It will be these two in the title game again. And I think it will be a clean sweep for St. Mary's. I do think at this stage they have shown that they are the better team. They've shown they're the more poised team down the stretch in games. They have shown, honestly, to me, to be the more versatile team at this stage. And the one thing about the St. Mary's team that makes me think this more and more is because of the lack of ups and downs that they have. The floor for the St. Mary's squad is maybe higher than any of the others. And while the ceiling may not be as high as some of the others of the past, you're not going to get this huge variability of what this team is capable of. I mean, you actually go back and look. We talk a lot about how Gonzaga's lost a bunch of these games close. All their 7, there's been not a single one of their losses that have come by double digits. Well, guess what? Neither is St. Mary's. All of their games are also single-digit losses. Even the one where you kind of look like and cringe at the one that really felt lopsided, which was Utah State, they lost that game by 7. They ended up losing that game by only 7. So you think about their 4 losses. It's not like the St. Mary's team has been blown out by anybody. It's not like they're really lopsided against anybody else. The losses have been, it's 1, 4, 5, 7. That's the 4 losses, the point totals. That's it. The St. Mary's squad has been the best in the WCC all year long. They were able to take the 2 from Gonzaga and took the 1 later in the season at the Kennel. In multiple stretches, were up by double digits, even late in that game. So I think about what this team has done to this point. They seem primed to also win the WCC tournament again, which obviously is going to be another accomplishment, another feather in the cap, another just talking point for this Gales team as they go into the NCAA tournament, which they will be in, and obviously Gonzaga will be in. If St. Mary's is able to cap it off, win again in Las Vegas, I think it's a very real possibility. We're looking at them as a 5 seed one more time, and hopefully that means that they'll be kept out west in either Denver or Seattle for those first 2 rounds of the tournament. Gonzaga, now they were to run the table and they win the WCC tournament in Las Vegas, I think that they also could end up sliding up to like a 6 seed or something like that, based on what we've already seen, because they've also probably will pick up 2 more quad 1 or a quad 2 and a quad 1 victory in that stretch as well to pad their resume as they go for the auto bid. But as we go into Las Vegas, we're getting ready for the tournament to start on Thursday. I think it's going to be St. Mary's one more time that wins this thing. The surprise team could end up being a Washington State or even a Portland. I do think either one of them could get a couple of games in this event. And we kick it off. It's San Diego and Pacific, the 10-11 game at 2:30 on ESPN Plus. And now that we're getting into the tournament time, this is going to be really exciting. I'm pumped to get this going. So again, I'll be doing an episode throughout every day throughout the course of the tournament. So I will be posting another one on Friday to preview those matchups, which will be LMU against either one of these 2 teams. And then also it will be the 8-9 game, Portland and Pepperdine. So we'll go over that matchup as well. All right. So I'll do it. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Follow along on social media at Post by Zach, at unofficial WCC Pod. The WCC tournament is here. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I will catch you later.